Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today we are here with Dr. Efi Pylarinou, an independent fintech and blockchain advisor, influencer, and co-founder of Daily Fintech Advisers here. And we will talk about the business aspects of blockchain and distributed ledger technology implementation live right now. So we will ask Dr. Efi Pylarinou some questions we have regarding the topic, and your questions are also welcome. Efi, good evening here. How are you doing?
Hello, Dennis. Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me, and thank you for pronouncing my name so well and clearly, which I recognize as a challenge.
Yeah, the first time I managed to do that right.
That's great. Great. So I'm joining you out of Switzerland.
Okay, that's where our summit will actually take place in November 22nd, 23rd. And you will have a big part of it with your track that will concern the Internet of Value, which we will also talk about. Now, for our audiences, to let them get a better understanding of actually what's going on, would you please tell us a bit more about yourself and how you actually first encountered the blockchain technology, not necessarily in business, but what was your first what was your first encounter with that, and when was that, and how did it happen?
Great, with pleasure. So I come from a very traditional financial background. I started my career in the 90s on Wall Street in New York, in the World Trade Center. And actually, those were the times that innovation was happening on Wall Street. It all, of course, changed later. And fast forward to today, I've been working, putting all my energy into fintech and innovation in financial services for the last 5 years. And that's really how I encountered blockchain technology. So it was really through work, by focusing on innovations in capital markets. That's how I first heard and it grabbed my attention about use cases in blockchain, is really looking close to what Digital Asset Holdings was doing with the Australian Stock Exchange in terms of changing the way stocks settle and are processed after the trade, like post-trade settlements. So that's honestly how it came about. And as a result of that, I've been doing the last 2 years work in advising companies that want to launch blockchain ventures. A lot of the companies that I advise are fintechs that have recognized the value and the impact that blockchain has, or the potential, if you like, and are launching separate ventures parallel to their fintechs that use blockchain technology.
Mm-hmm. So your first encounter and your future work was, well, it was mostly focused on the application of the distributed ledger technology rather than more common, what we currently see is some sort of tokenization of basically anything in order to create new cryptocurrencies.
Exactly. So it was not cryptocurrencies. It was not my personal interest in opening a wallet and getting some bitcoins or whatever. It was really on its applications in changing capital markets, for example. And quite soon after that, the second trigger was when I first sort of understood the idea that we can, through blockchain, exchange value, intangible values, like we could never do before. And when we talk about this later, I'd like to explain this better because it is related to the topic that I'll be discussing on the panel at the Blockchain Summit. I mean, I think it's a good point to add here that the Blockchain Leadership Summit has this sort of a diversity in the themes and the approach of the session. So it's not only a startup pitches, it's not only sort of the grown-up companies presenting there. It's a great mixture of think tanks, of academia, of philosophy, of specific use cases, and also of diverse applications of blockchain, not only in finance, which is, I guess, more common, and cryptocurrencies are, you know, of more interest to the audience, but applications in health, in governance, in governments, ID, and so on. So I think that's one of the big strengths of the summit.
Thank you. And talking about the newly introduced concept of the Internet of Value that you will be presenting on the summit, may I ask you to tell us a bit more about the aspects and prospects of this concept? We have seen the Internet of Things, we have seen the traditional Internet. Now, talking about the Internet of Value, that's a communication and interaction of people and technology, but would you please elaborate a bit more on that?
Actually, you know, like with several terms, each of us understands a different thing. I was discussing the other day sustainability, and everybody, when they hear the term, they understand a different thing. Some people narrow it down too much, others have a broader concept. And I think with the Internet of Value, because it's a new term, it's the same thing. So we can think of tokenizing intangible values, like thinking of our digital identity or our reputation score or some ethical score as something that is tradable. That definitely falls under the realm of the Internet of Value. But beyond that, I think it's important to see that and recognize that the Internet, as we know it today, of course, managed to increase our connectivity. And that is indisputable. And it's here that we need to understand that we need more than that, because the Internet, yes, brought us closer, increased our connectivity, but what it didn't do is it didn't increase the fairness or the collaboration or the way we collaborate. It didn't improve that. So we are looking underneath, you know, what's really resonating chain is the hope that we can create a network, we can have this connectivity, but with a better design. That's why we are pushing the limits and thinking about governance, different ways of governance than the ways we have now, different ways of collaboration. And that's really not an Internet that just makes things faster or puts more people in contact. It's about changing that network, changing the government, changing how nodes interact, how people interact in a fairer way, in a way that's built from the bottom top down. So that, I hope, sort of clarifies what it is. And of course, it has a lot of possibilities.
I'm sorry,
in science,
there
in
is...
art, in education.
Yes, there was a short lag that we kind of missed on probably the previous sentence. Yeah, the online connection is probably a bit sluggish.
Okay, so how about me repeating about the Internet of Value, that it's really about changing complete interact on the network. So it's not about speed or growth of connectivity, but it's rather in changing the way of the way we interact and the possibilities. So it's really wide open, in my opinion. We can imagine new values that are tradable. So certain assets that are sort of underpriced, if you want, undervalued today, might increase in value in this new era of blockchain applications in the Internet of Value, and some that are overpriced might decline in price. So I see a lot of potential there, and I see a lot of use cases that we can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, that's definitely one of the greatest prospects of the blockchain development, seeing it applied to the social interaction and to the financial interaction between people in the society and between states. That's definitely one of the spheres that has not been yet digitalized. And yes, what you're saying about the fairness of that interaction and value appreciation is definitely a valuable aspect. Now, speaking about the blockchain development itself, we can currently see, for some reason, insufficient focus on the technological improvement and common adoption as compared to the growing financial interest of cryptocurrency trading and ICOs and new investment models. What do you consider the major obstacle for industrial corporations and big investors to join in to initiate blockchain adoption in common life? Like, why is it more interesting, or why is there more focus on just developing new investment models rather than actually enhancing our social life and interaction with the new technology? Is it some lack of resources or finance, or is it probably some absence of scientific or technological expertise?
You know, this issue is more to a behavioral issue, I think, and can be explained in behavioral economics. It's natural that when there is a technology that has so much disruptive potential, that participants in the market want to find ways to invest, in quotes, in this technology. And the traditional way would be to invest in early ventures. And at the protocol layer, to do that, it's basically by buying into a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, like Ether, and so on. So that's normal. And then I guess we've gone through a phase of herd behavior that has led to this interest in cryptocurrencies. And at the same time, the truth is that the technology is not developed for all sorts of reasons. There's a lot of challenges, technical, security. We step back, or if we go up to 35,000 feet and think of this, things are accelerating quite fast. We're just impatient, I think, and we want to have the solutions faster than is possible. We have a problem of resources. We don't have enough people working at this problem. And also innovation, naturally, in its early stage, happens in a very scattered way. So that's what's happening with blockchain too. There's many projects that are being developed. There's a lot of experimentation going on. It's very scattered, and there's no interoperability between these projects. Plus, we are running the risk that when we are building on top of protocols that are not mature enough, and we're building applications, then we have further risk that if these protocol layers don't make it, then we might have larger failure in the system. And add on to that, especially for blockchain applications in the financial system, which are quite a lot percentage-wise, those are subject to regulatory risk, which is actually becoming an operational risk. So there's all these factors that I must say are there. At the same time, I want to point out something very positive that is going on. Since I come from a fintech angle, all the innovation that I have seen, whether it's from startups or from incumbents, it's very much customer-centric. In the case of blockchain, in my humble opinion, all innovation is actually society-centric. So that's a very big difference. And I think that's a good thing. So it's first society-centric, holistically speaking, instead of customer-centric. So I think that that's a good thing that is already happening, and it's worth shedding some light on it.
Mm-hmm. So we are probably expecting the common life adoption of the blockchain once the focus merges towards that, when enough industries join the financial side of the blockchain development, or shall they be sort of parallel, or probably they are not even connected. Now we see there are a lot of universities that are taking part in our summit, and that are bring in their expertise and share their visions on the blockchain development. And in many cases, they are totally not financially oriented. They are considering mathematical modeling and computer science as the fields of the blockchain application. So shall that be just another aspect, or is there a link between how much investment comes into the overall industry and how soon we expect the blockchain technology applied commonly?
I think that everything is happening parallel at the same time. As you correctly pointed out, academia has stepped in seriously, and it is needed, because essentially, if we look at blockchain as another trust machine, potentially replacing the trust mechanism that we have in place in society. And I'm borrowing this concept from the book of Michael Casey titled The Trust Machine, and I think that's a good way to think of it. Then we have to look to mathematics to define the trust algorithms that are underlying, if we want to get rid of the institutions and all the human biases and replace them with rules in the protocol that defines how trust is coded, if you want. So I think that what's going on now is that from a social explanation perspective, we people, the society, we all trust technology a lot because it has succeeded in the last, let's say, 30 to 50 years in our sort of conscious and subconscious. And on the other hand, especially after the 2008 financial crisis, we have lost trust in our financial institutions. And if you look at other measures like the Edelman Trust Barometer, you will also see that in general, the trust to several institutions, societal institutions, is going down. So all this resonates. So I think we have academia working on this, and it will happen. It's not the mass adoption applications that are going to happen first, in my opinion. I think the industry that is more ripe and will probably see the first use cases is the finance industry, because it is the one that was very much traumatized from the 2008 crisis. It is, for the last 10 years, it's paying a huge cost because of all the regulation that's been imposed on it. Continues to pay these costs, and blockchain offers an opportunity for transparency and efficiencies and a different way of doing things. And I think that industry will be the first one.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of some particular industries or spheres of life, in your opinion, which will be the most affected by the soon blockchain and or cryptocurrency integration? So which are the most drastic changes or advantages we are about to observe in the nearest future?
I clearly think that it's going to be in the digital identity space, and that will have a huge impact, societal impact. It's happening, and then I think that cross-border e-commerce and supply chain finance are the areas that are going to also be affected. If we speak in the next year or two, I think that's the examples that we will have. And we have the big tech giants, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, Consensus, Bitfury, all those assisting in making this happen. Where we should be also investing, and we are not investing that much, and we could see high impact, is really in emerging markets and in solving the big societal problems like hunger, poverty, management of resources from water, energy, and even human resources. And these are problems that theoretically are solvable. We do have the resources, but what we do not have is we do not have consensus. We lack of a consensus mechanism to sit at the table and get these problems solved. So my wish, that is not happening right now, is that we put in more money and more resources towards applying blockchain in those areas, because then we will see a huge impact and ripple effects in our society.
I see. So it's like in Adam Douglas's Hitchhiker's Guide, we have the answer, but we have to build up some solution to actually raise the question.
Yes, and in a way, it's a problem of convincing and educating and making the process more inclusive in understanding the potential, because we still are at the early stages, and there's a lot of parts of the society and of the economies that don't understand the full potential, are very skeptical, cynical, and are not really engaging in experimenting, in piloting studies. I mean, if you look, the World Bank, for example, is already recognizing this potential and is piloting programs and very much focused in emerging markets by issuing bonds on the blockchain and other programs. We want to see more of that. Leading institutions embracing the philosophy and becoming preachers, if you want, of the potential.
I see. Just a second. Just 1 second. There is a short update. Okay, we have a comment question here. Just a second. Let me read that out for you. Yes, here is a question from one of our followers. It says, Sandy Monk, ma'am, kindly put a light on healthcare use case, and if it is EHR, kindly elaborate on it so that we can develop an in-depth understanding on the terms of health fintech. Yes, that's the one.
I'm not sure that I understand the question. If to comment on a specific health project, can you reread it?
Yes, it's considering the question concerns healthcare use case, and if it is EHR, kindly elaborate on it, so develop an in-depth understanding. Well, I could also address to that we do have a large track of our summit program dedicated to healthcare on the blockchain, and I believe that's what we can actually tell about. Well, I believe the question concerns the applications of the blockchain in healthcare. So wait, what can be developed on that?
There are several angles of blockchain applications in healthcare. A lot of them now are looking at the health data privacy issue and how to solve that and build ecosystems where token economies are designed to protect the data, the healthcare data, but at the same time help scientists do their research and so on. But there's all sorts of other applications that are also implemented from the pure scientific research side. But I think, as you said, at the summit, there will be more in-depth discussion. I'm more familiar with the blockchain for finance use cases rather than the health care use cases.
Well, and from my side, I can also add, since I've been working with several projects and startups that concerned healthcare, digital marketplaces for the drug industry, and also charity programs. It's not only about keeping the track of records, but it also is this blockchain is also applied to enhance the investment process, not only in terms of actually completely not in terms of crypto, but in terms of the clinical trials, which are extremely costly, and using the blockchain technology for data storage and for data processing, it could be applied to save us like millions and billions of dollars in costs in developing new drugs, which is a process that is constant and continuous, and it takes about 10 to 15 years to design a new drug, and therefore all of those millions of dollars of investments in clinical trials are spent, and that's why there are something about 75% of people having no or insufficient access to the drug industry, and that all of these problems could be solved by implementing the blockchain for data processing. Okay, and probably one of our last questions, if we don't see another question from our followers, is well, let me try to promote our summit a little bit more. What is your expectation of the summit? What do you expect the audiences to gain from taking part or visiting the summit in Basel in November?
There's several distinct, if you want, factors. The first I would say is the cross-disciplinary nature of the summit, meaning that there's all sorts of use cases and industries, both from the speakers and the audience, that are going to be involved. In several crypto summits, there's typically a dominant sector, be it finance, typically in cryptocurrencies, and or be it gaming, or be it entertainment, or whatever. So this is the one thing. The second is it's got a heavy weight on academic presence, on a heavy research presence, and on government and agency delegations, as the sector is maturing, as countries realize that this is a huge opportunity for their ministries. We're going to be seeing several country delegations being officially involved in the summit. Personally, I'm also looking to meet in person with several of the personalities that I connect with socially, be it entrepreneurs or and thought leaders, which is always a great opportunity for me to get to know them in person.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll be personally extremely glad to see you in November in Basel on our summit. Well, I guess we are basically done. Thank you for taking your time and sharing your insights on the blockchain implementation to the business industries and the global adoption of that with us tonight. I guess we have no other questions from the audience, so we can basically turn it in. And
Thank you, Dennis, very much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. The pleasure is all on my side. For our audiences, please stay tuned to us. You will get the announcements and updates regarding our Facebook Live interviews with our speakers and summit participants in our group in Facebook. Thank you very much, and everyone have a good one. Take care.
Thank you. Okay.